On today's show, the stove, the free agency trade buzz is stewing, talking a tiny bit about some of the biggest moves that we've seen recently, how they may affect the Padres or what they may be doing going forward, and then looking at some of the things that the Padres have to do and what to hope for in terms of them surpassing the Dodgers and potentially winning a World Series, but most importantly, just being contenders. What's it going to take? What do they need to do this offseason? All that and more. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Friday, December 13th. Friday the 13th. Ooh. As always, I'm your host with sometimes occasionally, but for certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno, as well as on Blue Sky at the same handle. Check me out there, and also check out justbaseball.com. Very important because I write there, host a podcast there as well, that I'm going to be bringing back soon, and I'm going to be more obnoxious about, especially as we get closer to the end of the year. But for now, go check that out and subscribe to the newsletter. I work on that with a buddy of mine, Elijah Evans. Sometimes I write a huge portion of it. Sometimes we're editing, all sorts of stuff, to just give you like that immediate reaction and kind of the breakdown of some of the biggest moves going on throughout the sport. So go check that out, guys. Today's episode, though, let me tell you, it is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Oh boy, folks, oh boy. Things are getting crazy out here in baseball land. I mean, we started with Blake Snell. Like, what was it, 3 weeks ago now? Then we got the Juan Soto contract from, I think it was Sunday, this past Sunday. Then we had Max Fried. Then we've had so many crazy things happen, I think, this offseason already. And not to take a little bit of a victory lap, I told y'all that I thought this is going to be a crazy offseason. And to think that there are still some incredible players out there like Corbin Burnes, like Roki Sasaki, like Pete Alonso, like Alex Bregman, Anthony Santander, Teoscar Hernandez, Jack Flaherty, Christian Walker, Hassan Kim, Jurickson Profar. There's so many players, so many interesting players out there. And we're going to be talking about some of those and some of the ones that I think that the Padres should sign, at least how I'm feeling about them right now. But in terms of just in general, let me tell you, I think more trades have happened as well this offseason than people might have expected. I was talking a lot about the free agent class, but this is nuts. Today, by the time everybody's watching this, and by the way, apologies for being late. I mean, the Thursday night football game was just such an offensive slugfest that it just sent me into a coma and I couldn't get back. You know what I mean? It was just absolute madness, all of these trades and what have you. I mean, what can I say? But no, in all seriousness, apologies for that. But it is Friday, so I figured give you guys a nice episode to digest over the weekend. But we just heard at the time, before I started recording actually, that the Yankees just made a huge trade for Devin Williams of the Milwaukee Brewers. So cool, don't have to worry about the Brewers again. Wow. I, for one, everybody, am shocked that the Brewers are trading one of their best players. But then again, they did get some interesting stuff in return, like Nestor Cortez. And then the big trade of the afternoon, Kyle Tucker going to the Chicago Cubs. And they traded some prospects for him, too. And you saw a haul that they got. Look, here's the thing, man. There's so many deals going around right now that I really am starting to think, and we're going to talk about this in a second, the Dylan Cease kind of situation with whether or not they should trade him. It's just like the prices, I don't know what it is. And this happens every now and then. Teams are just all, in on going for it. Teams just figure out like, we're resting on our laurels too much. And it's just one of those off seasons. And it's been really, really awesome to see. And we're going to talk about this because I think that the NL West, and then the entire National League in general is just going to be a big storyline because it does feel like personally that the American League is just a little bit, I don't know. I think there's not too much depth there in terms of the best teams in baseball. I think that the best teams in baseball are all going to be from the National League, right? I think if the Padres are as good as they were last year, they're one of them. The Dodgers, the Braves, the Phillies, right? I just personally think that the Phillies and who else? The Mets, right? Like there's so many good teams out there that I'm just kind of, I feel like 6 of the top like 8 teams next year, we might be at a point where it's like, yeah, 6 of them are from the National League. But we'll see how that all transpires. And by the way, for my video listeners, yes, I am wearing contacts. Apologies if that freaks you out a little bit and whatnot, just to see me like that. But anyway, let's get into it. I want to talk about first when it comes to what will take for the Padres to surpass the Dodgers and be able to have a really productive offseason. I think that there's a couple things to talk about. First things, I just want to talk about overall vibes, and that, like, it's not easy to project these things. It's never written in stone. I still think that it's worth talking about that. Yes, they were disappointing in 2023, but in 2022, the Padres were actually projected to not finish very high whatsoever. And they ended up beating the Dodgers that year. This year, they were a really good team throughout the whole year, and then they didn't beat the Dodgers. So these things aren't like set in stone. But in terms of just being able to get back at it, I think there's a bunch of things that need to happen for the Padres next year. I think the first thing that we got to talk about, just in general, remember that the Dodgers are not unbeatable. You know what I'm saying? Nobody is. And you just have to make the playoffs. So, like, just to drop the facade, bottom line is, ever since Major League Baseball added an extra wildcard team, it just feels like not that the regular season doesn't matter, but it feels even more like, you know what, just make it in as long as you have a chance. It doesn't feel like it's insurmountable for the Padres, despite being in a really good division, with teams like the D-backs, the Giants making big splashes with the Willy Adames signing, right? And they're going to have Jung Ho Lee back next year. The Giants might be sneaky decent. You still got the D-backs, who had one of the best rated offenses in baseball this year. It's just that their pitching really, really let them down, especially out of the bullpen. So, and thank you, Manny Machado, for that walk-off against Paul Sewald. You aided in the Diamondbacks' demise in that area, I guess. But, just keep that in mind, in general, that this team is not unbeatable and that anything can happen once you get into the postseason. And in general, look, it's very hard to win back-to-back. You know what I'm saying? Just look at it that way. It's very hard to win back-to-back. But other things, in terms of just the kind of general vibes, when it comes to the Padres for this next season, I think that you need to take into account that, yes, they aren't making a lot of big moves yet, which still, to me, I feel like there's still plenty of reasons to believe that they're going to make big moves. Although I will say with Quintana, I don't know if, new Padres ownership group, I don't know exactly how many moves they're going to make. I will say that even if they don't make big superstar players and they don't acquire new things, it's worth noting that they did have some players underperform last year. Fernando Tatis Jr. isn't bad whatsoever, let me be very clear, but he hasn't delivered that MVP-like form, and there's nothing that I've seen that suggests he can't. He hit the ball hard as heck. He's now had 2 straight years in a row where his weighted on base was significantly lower than his expected weighted on base. 332 versus 364 in 2023. In my opinion, that was a little bit inflated only because the hard hit stuff was there, but he was just way too antsy at the plate and whatnot. And he just wasn't getting on base at the right clip. This year, though, 359 versus 393 expected on weighted on base. I just don't think that that's going to continue for a second time in a row. And the bottom line is, he only played 102 games. He produced 3.2 wins above replacement. I think if he gets back to the defensive stuff and he just starts really racking up the home runs, I think he could hit like 45 home runs, steal 25 bags, play pretty good defense. He doesn't have to be a platinum glover again. But if that happens, any type of regression that you get from some other players will be less felt because you'll just be able to have Tatis again. And if everybody might forget, because it's been so long, like 2021 Tatis really did carry that team a lot of times, right? Like 2021 Tatis was a problem, as all those aggregator accounts like to say, or was a problem. But in this case, it's actually true, unlike those aggregator accounts who will be like, Jason Williams of the Sacramento Kings was great, or like Matt Adams of the St. Louis Cardinals was great. It's like, those are good players, not amazing players, or Chris Archer and whatnot, right? I think that Tatis, if he plays like an MVP next year, you really might see a situation in where this isn't going to be, if Machado declines a little bit, if they re-sign certain players like Profar, that if you don't get a ton of value out there, if Jackson Merrill has a little bit of sophomore slump, Tatis by himself, I genuinely do believe that we're talking about a top 10 player in baseball. And when you have that, it's a type of player that can really help carry an offense. So if you're worried that they aren't going out and signing, or trading for Kyle Tucker, or they're not trading for other certain players, remember that we have Tatis. And I know that is the most easy thing in the world to say, but it is true. And you should remember that he by himself can make up for a lot. Not everything. But the good news is they have other things going for them too. And we're going to talk about that in a second, as well as, of course, getting into a little bit of the off-season wish list. But first, ladies and gentlemen, we got to talk to you about one of our sponsors, and that is one of our longtime, fantastic, widely beloved sponsors. That is Gametime, ladies and gentlemen. And let me tell you, whether it is baseball, whether it is basketball, women's or men's, whether it is football, whether it is hockey, whether it is comedy, concerts, theater clubs, whatever, all the ticket going experiences, Gametime's got you covered. They even have a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier, filtering out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through all 1,000 tickets and being like, I just want to see the lowest, man. Make this easy for me. They got you covered, man. And when it comes to high-profile events, let me tell you, they also will give you all sorts of fun deals. You know what I mean? They have super deals. They have zone deals, that you pick a zone and then they kind of pick the seat for you and you'll get stuff. They have all these different kind of seat views from the app, flash deals before the game starts and whatnot. The closer you get to game time, the less the ticket will go up, be valued at, right? It's really, really great. And if you download the Game Time app today, you can create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. And just like that, we are back here in the Locked On Padres podcast, me revealing to you how these things could go down. It's almost like when I'm a fan of things and how they give you, you guys all know those like comicbook.com posts, if you're a nerd like me, where it's like top 10 reasons Batman could beat Superman or whatever. That's what it feels like I'm doing right now. But continuing on, another thing when it comes to this Padres team, I talked about this already last week, but just want to reiterate it, is that the Padres bullpen, I think, is going to be genuinely awesome. So no matter what happens with the Padres starting pitching, I think that there's a universe in which they just kind of patch this together and they say, we got Michael King, we got Dylan Cease, we got Yu Darvish, maybe we use a Matt Waldron, stuff like that, and the bullpen can really carry you through the rest of the season and at least make the team good enough to the point where they can earn a wild card spot. So I do think that the bullpen is going to be awesome, and I've talked about that last week. Go check out, or not last week, this week. I think that was Wednesday's episode, if I'm not mistaken, going over the bullpen. Go check that out because I think the bullpen might be crazy next year, guys. I think it's going to be better. I know they lost Tanner Scott, but I think it's going to be better. I really do. But anyway, let me tell you. The other thing is, and this is dumb. It's dumb. Look, guys, I'm not the smartest in the world, right? I think that there's some hope that he's been so dreadful, right, Xander Bogaerts, that maybe he'll get better, right? Like, I am just a fundamental believer in that, right? You just need to get into the playoffs. And I think that with Xander Bogaerts, I still think that he can provide decent value as a defensive player, whether it be at second, whether it be at shortstop, I don't know. But, and he's probably going to be back at shortstop, by the way, because of the loss of Ha-Seong Kim. That's what I would expect. But we'll see. I actually think that there's some really interesting ways that the Padres can maneuver when it comes to this team going forward. Not just in terms of trades, but in terms of signings, where depending on, all right, you want to move Arise? I don't know if I'd want to do that. That'd be kind of wild, by the way, if the three straight batting title guy gets moved for the third year in a row. That says something about him, but also something about the league in general. You move him around. I get it, because not always the best first baseman. Maybe you move Jake Cronenworth back to second. You have Xander Bogaerts at shortstop. And at first base, maybe they can spend some money. Maybe they can trade for a guy. Maybe the Giants really want another good starting pitcher. So you trade Dylan Cease there. And then you acquire Lamont Wade. And then you get a prospect or a reliever or two, something like that. I could see that happening, right? I think that the Padres have like a decent amount of maneuverability, considering it might not be budget related. I still think that they have like a decent amount of like moves that they can make. I really, really do. I think that they could do some stuff. And I know that people will talk about Quintana. I know everyone will talk about, just the new ownership group, but frankly, I look, billionaires can be very brazen with how much they won't care about spending on their teams, but there's something about it that with Peter Seidler passing away, I would still be a little bit surprised if they aren't going to wiggle at least just a little bit. I just feel like that would be an atrocious look. I could be dead wrong, and that this might be the product of a small market and maybe not getting as much flack from media and what have you from the public. If you were to be like, yeah, this beloved owner, Peter Seidler, RIP, he spent all the time, really cared about winning. We don't care about winning. And screw, you know what I mean? Like, that would be just kind of crazy if that happened. So I do think that there is some hope there. But I digress. Xander Bogaerts needs to produce. I think that that's a big thing that's going to have to happen for next year. Unlike the bullpen, unlike those things, unlike Tatis, right? Unlike my belief that this is just how baseball works and teams aren't going to be, win 140 games the way that they're projected usually. I think that the Bogaerts thing worries me. I'm just hopeful that he's just been so bad that we're reaching a territory of bad that's like genuinely kind of surprising. Like, how are you healthy? Like, here's what I'll say. I don't understand why Bogaerts in 2023, in the second half, produced the WRC plus he did, which I believe was around 138. I don't understand how you can produce that offense, have an okay hard hit rate, which is whatever, and then after an off-season off, you're worse? Like, I don't understand, because we literally saw that following the wrist being hurt, that he was able to still, provide some value. You know what I mean? Like, that's what's weird to me. It's not like we saw that he was bad ever since then, and then this year he was also bad. Like, we had a break, a period in which he was great. So I'm just a little bit weirded out by that. But again, there's things we got to hope for. Let's talk about free agents, what the Padres need to do. Obviously, number one, you absolutely need to get him. And frankly, I think, talked about this a little bit the other day, I've talked about this throughout the offseason, I think it's officially starting to get a little bit overlooked, or a little bit, underreported how much of a chance the Padres have. There's just too many things that are lining up. Not to be Charlie Day from Always Sunny with the wall-to-wall pin connections and putting on my tinfoil hat, but there's a few things. First of all, conspiracy Javi here, lack of early moves, and I'm telling you, I am used to at least hearing something, whether it be stuff that I just hear from anonymous sources, or it just be what most of the time what I hear, which is what a lot of other people are hearing, which is from reports, the general thing with baseball. It feels a little bit surprising that AJ Preller, who ever since I've been hosting this podcast, has made a big move, whether it be during the deadline or free agency, with the exception of the Nick Castellanos year, so prior to 2022. Yes, prior to 2022, every one of those periods, he's always been pretty active, right? Even if it hasn't worked out all the time, right? The Adam Frazier trade didn't work out. Who was the defender that they got? The center fielder? I'm blanking on his name right now. He was an Astro. Chas McCormick? No, I'm blanking on his name, but that didn't work out, right? And this past offseason, yes, they didn't have their sexiest move wasn't something that was all that exciting, but they traded Juan Soto. Like, that was a big move, and it ended up working out pretty okay for them, at least in terms of the immediate package they received. And then they end up signing, Jerks and Profar back. They bring in Donovan Solano. They still have a pretty good offseason, and it was at least, again, something where a lot of things happened. So I think that this lack of early moves means that they might be thinking we have a really good shot at Roki Sasaki. And I just think fundamentally they need him more than any other team. No other team needs him as badly, because they're in a position where they clearly want to win, and they've got a juggernaut right next to them, a Thanos with almost every Infinity Stone. I'm going to say almost, only because, I got to give you guys some hope. They're not warping reality yet, you know what I mean? I think that they just need him more than any other team. The next thing is that I just don't think these people are dumb. Look, I said this a while ago, excuse me for the football connection, but last year, Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, I swear just randomly was like, I think Justin Herbert's the most talented player in the league. Jim Harbaugh's not a stupid man. And I don't think you drop things like that unless there's some type of plan in place. That to me was Jim Harbaugh going, call me, I would like to coach the Chargers. So for me, when I see AJ Preller during Peter Seidler's memoriam mention Roki Sasaki by name, he didn't say Manny. He didn't say a new name they acquired. He didn't even say an old one like they traded. Necessarily. I mean, I think he brought up Soto once or twice, but I just don't think you name drop someone like that. You know what I mean? I really don't. And maybe Preller, this is different than Harbaugh and all that. I just don't know, right? Because Harbaugh's thing was it's just him that could do it potentially, but still, you need a second party. And to me, I just don't think you do that. If there wasn't at least something potentially in the works. Darvish, obviously being the next reason. Darvish, I think they've said, is really going to be pivotal in this recruitment case. And to me, absolutely need that to happen. Would love that. And specifically when it comes to this recruitment case, Joel Wolf, agent for Roki Sasaki, mentioned pretty recently that with Darvish's personal issues, he publicly commented, Joe Wolf, about how much he appreciated that the Padres, how they stood by him. And that means a lot. It really must mean a lot. especially for the agent to bring that up out loud. And the Padres really do deserve credit in general because thank God we just try to treat him like a person. I know PR is part of this too, and you know how awful it would look, right? But in general, they handled it really well, and Darvish seems to be thrilled with the way that they handled it. So love to see that, and it gives the way they handled Darvish with his personal issues and the agent commenting on it. It gives credence to the latest reports about how reportedly, it's bad. Reportedly reports that Roki Sasaki might prefer, according to his agent, like a smaller market team because of some mental stuff or whatnot, maybe not wanting all the pressure on him and what have you. I just think that adds up, man. And what team showed that they are there for you and, you know, will be there for you and have all the facilities needed and all the not precautions, but all the necessary vehicles to make sure that everything's okay with you mentally or personally, whatever it is. The Padres, because of the way they did Yu Darvish, and I think that Joe Wolf attests to that. So yeah, need Roki Sasaki desperately. If they do nothing else this offseason but sign Roki Sasaki, it's an A offseason. That's how much I think this matters. The way I'm viewing it, and I've got some friends of mine who know prospects, they're like, if this guy was treated the way we do the MLB Top 100 prospects, he's at minimum a top 5 guy. Think of it that way. Think of it as you would be getting Junior Caminero. You'd be getting Jackson Holiday. I know he had a bad season, but you get my point. You'd be having Julio Rodriguez that rookie year. You'd be getting one of those type of players, except he's a pitcher, and he's not going to cost much for a team that has a little bit of problem when it comes to salary going forward, right? So you need him. It's an A offseason if they do that. But how does it become an A+++ S-tier supernova offseason? Well, my friends, we're going to talk about some of the options that I like, just very briefly. We're not going to dive in fully necessarily into each player 100%. I want to save that for some future episodes because it's a long off season. But first, I got to talk to you guys about another one of our sponsors, and that is our good friends over at FanDuel. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to tackle the NFL, if you wanted to bet on Brock Purdy throwing a horrible interception, and Matthew Stafford not throwing any touchdowns either. Really weird game. I didn't watch it. I just saw the highlights in the box score. But nonetheless, go to FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in uno place. Just one place, guys. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your aforementioned bets. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, folks. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And just like that, everybody, we are back, thriving, vibing, talking about what will it take for the Padres to slay the dragon. What will it take for them to come back? Let's talk about some of my guys that I really like. First up, easy one, Asherix and Profar. I think that it is kind of impossible to measure chemistry. It is impossible, or at least very much impossible when you're an outsider, to measure all the intangibles of players. But for whatever reason, Jurickson Profar, and it's not just 1 year, it's multiple years, has significantly overperforms harsh, has significantly improved when with the Padres. I'm talking 2020, right? 2020 included, 2021 when he has his best season. Or hold on. Was it 2021? Why do I always forget? Jurickson Profar has been like such a fixture in my life. You would think that I'd remember by now, like what exactly all of his numbers were. But you have in 2021, he was not incredible in 2020 for the Padres necessarily, but he did have 113 WRC plus, which was the largest of his career at that time. He hit 278. He wasn't great the next year. I acknowledge that, right? Like he was pretty rough the next year. But then after that, 2022 has his best season of his major league career. Then he goes to the Rockies and he's bad. Then he comes back to the Padres and he has, again, his best season of his career. And we saw what happened last year. Literally the starting left fielder, right? So I think Jurickson Profar would be a great addition. I think bringing him back, the chemistry matters for whatever reason. He loves playing in San Diego. I think it's likely. And I also think that with Profar, it's not as fluky as people might think. I'm not saying he's going to be amazing, but we talked about this in the Padres, the Profar player review. Go check that out on YouTube. In the playlist, go check that out, or just search Profar on the podcast app. I talked about that in more detail, but I just don't think it's too much of a fluke. He made changes with his stance. He always has had good hitting ability. It just seems like he's fully realized it. So a 3-year deal, maybe with a player option of sorts, because I know some teams might be reticent to give this guy a contract. They might be like, you know what, the Padres know him better. We don't want to be in a Cody Bellinger situation where it was a total fluke and we bought into it like the Cubs did. So I'm thinking you go after him, and especially without Tyler O'Neill and Michael Conforto on the board, I'm big on re-signing Jurickson Profar now just because of that. I think that Tyler O'Neill could have been a great one. I thought that the deal that the Orioles gave him, 3 years, 49, I think it has an option in there too. I thought that would have been great. Tyler O'Neill has some really bad downside, but he also has the ability to be like a 5-win player, which I just don't think is an impossible thing. He can hit for power, and he can play pretty good defense. That's why I would have liked him, potentially, if they didn't want to go for Profar. But we'll have to see. And then Michael Conforto, I thought, could just be a 1-year sort of player that you get for not too much, and then just pray for some upside. And at the very minimum, he's going to hit you like 20 home runs probably. So, and you know, Dodgers just signed him, so maybe I'm right. We'll see what happens with them next year. But all in all, I think Profar, absolutely bring him back, do what you need. Maybe one of those contracts that has an option, right? Could absolutely do that. And I really do think that he still could be in the Padres price range. Joc Pederson. Joc Pederson is another one. Talked about him a little bit before, but this is arguably one of the most undervalued players in all of baseball. I know that he's a little bit of a meme sometimes, but last year, 151 WRC plus, year before that, 109, year before that, 144. So this isn't a fluke. You know what I'm saying? I know he was weird that 1 year with the Dodgers, right? He was weird with the Dodgers, and then he was weird when he got traded to, I think, the Giants initially. He was just very weird. But every year before that 2020 and 2021 stretch, 126 WRC plus, 126, 100, 128, 118. I think that when utilized correctly, Joc Pederson is very undervalued as just this like platoon killer. You know what I mean? And I don't think he's going to cost much at age 32. I really don't, because it's well known that in his career, he struggles not just defensively, but he struggles against lefties, right? Like, this is a guy who's had like genuinely crazy splits at points. And in terms of his career, he has a 76 WRC plus against lefties, 128 against righties. I think if the Padres, depending on what they do, let's say they're losing Ha-Seong Kim. You have Bogaerts at shortstop, then you've got Cronenworth at second base, Arise at first base. You can flip-flop those two, and then you've got one DH in Joc Pederson. And you can do what you did last year. Maybe you have a second DH. Maybe you have Solano or someone like that, or another player that just does well against lefties to make up for that. But I will say, this past year, it was the best season of Joc Pederson's career. I will say this. And when it comes to that split, it wasn't quite as bad when it comes to the lefty-righty thing this past year. He had a 124 WRC plus against lefties and a 154 against righties. I don't necessarily think that that's 100%. I would rather go with the fact that he's always struggled against both sides of the plate, so I wouldn't necessarily 100% believe that. But I don't think it was a total fluke, man. I just think that Joc Pederson, if you give him his role, the man can hit, and I don't think he's going to cost too much, at least according to most projections, right? Joc Pederson, according to The Athletic, 1 year, $16 million. I think it makes sense, and they also have San Diego as a best fit. I think it would be great. I think it would actually give you even more upside than Donovan Solano gave you. Just a different type of batter. He might be not as much of a barrels king who's hitting singles and all that stuff, but I think he could just clobber some home runs. And age 32, he's not too old, right? Donovan Solano's a little bit old, so at some point you have to start wondering if he's going to be able to keep that up still. So love Joc Pederson. Another one, Yasmani Grandal. Adore this guy. You know why? Because Danny Jansen's gone, Gary Sanchez is gone, Kyle Higashioka's gone. So you got to sign someone, because I don't think that Luis Campusano is going to cut it. I am worried, or at least I'll put it this way. As one of the creators of the Campusano hive, I would rather have another option, just in case this gets bad, because his defense did not improve. There might be some kind of personality problems, maybe. I just am wondering, right? Like, what exactly is going on there that he's so bad defensively and he's just lost it hitting wise? I would rather him be a secondary catcher that you hope for, and then you sign another guy who's not going to cost too much, and that's Yasmani Grandal, who, by the way, actually rated pretty decently when it came to framing this past offseason, right? In terms of all qualified catchers, in terms of catcher framing runs, he ranked 11th among all qualified starting catchers. He's always been a really good defensive player. And also, the vibe, I kind of like the idea of just saying, oh, let's bring him back. We messed up last time. You get him for nothing. You have a decent floor in terms of the defense. I don't think you're getting back the offense that made him a multi-time All-Star, right, with the Dodgers and with the White Sox a couple times. But at the very minimum, at least he's okay at drawing some walks, right? 300 on base last year, 95 WRC plus. It's just not awful. And it wouldn't shock me, frankly, if he's at a 101 WRC plus and he just gets that batting average up a little bit or walks more, maybe hits a couple more home runs. I just think as a tandem, given all the other options that are gone, I don't want Brandon Valenzuela starting. I just don't think that guy can hit enough. I think it's really, really, really bad with him in terms of another Padres catching prospect. And no, I do not want to see Ethan Salas at this age. He's not ready. It would be crazy for them to call him up already. He's not ready. He had like a 76 WRC plus in an A ball. Really, guys? Come on. Give him a second. The upside is through the roof. He could be our Adley Rutschman. But Adley Rutschman, he struggled on early at 18 years old or whatever too. Give it time and you might have that in the future. So we'll have to see on that point. And frankly, I don't know if Preller's going to be able to wait that long for that. Like, he might just trade Ethan Salas. We'll have to see. But hey, good thing about new ownership is apparently they won't let him. But those are two other guys. Walker Buehler is the other one. I think Walker Buehler is on the high end of if they aren't able to get a Roki Sasaki, I think that would be the high end. Because bottom line is he did look great in the postseason, Walker Buehler, but he did struggle overall this year, like really bad. So, you know, I don't think he's going to cost as much, and I think that the upside is there for him to return back to those like genuine like Cy Young qualities things, right? Like he was unfreaking believable in 2021 and also in 2019, like genuinely cracked. In his second year in 2018, he was awesome too. He gets strikeouts, he limits walks, he limits hard contact, and also this year, really high home run fly ball rate, 18.8%. Much, much higher than his 12.9% year. Just to give you one stat where I'm like, I think that part of this, like, I know, 5.3 ERA, I know, but 1 year kind of prove it deal with an option, that could be something for the Padres for sure, especially given their budget constraints. But if what I suspect, which is I think he might cost more than people realize, I know the numbers weren't this good, but I think people aren't believing it. They're going to be like, he's coming back from Tommy John. We believe it. And you know what? He was great in the postseason. If he costs a little bit more and there's maybe more suitors and more teams that are aggressive that we just can't bring him over, maybe he's been Dodger pilled too much, I think there's some other decent options. Scherzer, only reason is because of just we're bringing him home. You know what I mean? Ken Rosenthal, you were wrong. You were just 3 years early. You know what I mean? That one's a little bit more of a meme for me. I think Scherzer is kind of done. Wouldn't hate it if they were able to get Roki and maybe they feel decent about some other guys and you're like, let's just throw Scherzer in there as like a back end guy who might be able to do stuff. But I will say Padres track record with signing guys that are like big names but might be washed up. Nelson Cruz, Matt Carpenter, Jake Arrieta, you know what I'm saying? Like, not the best track record there, so don't want to do that, but just for the vibe, and I just think it would be funny if they brought him there. Actual options, though, Nick Pivetta, Chad innings eater, right? This guy always throws innings, seriously, like every single year. He's never necessarily doing anything amazing, but I don't think he's going to cost too much, and every year since 2021, he's thrown at least 142 innings. You kind of need that, especially if you're not going to be big on budget. You just have a guy that you're like, we're going to go out and combine that with what I said about the bullpen. Really like Pivetta as a potential option. And then Jose Quintana, for similar reasons, just not going to cost too much. And I think a little bit higher upside than a Nick Pivetta. Might cost a little bit more than Pivetta, but nonetheless, I'd be down for that too. And then, of course, lastly, trading Dylan Cease. I'm going to save that for next week because I actually want to wait a little bit and see what kind of ferments over the weekend. I got a little bit of a feeling. I don't know about him. But, you know, what could you trade him for? I'd love to trade him to the Orioles. Heston Kjerstad. You know what I mean? The Orioles have almost too many prospects. And there is a rumor that even with new ownership that the GM isn't spending. And they're saying, oh, it's the GM that's preventing it. I don't know if I believe that because the guy who owns the team not having more power than his employee is just weird to me. It's not how the world works. But bottom line is we're seeing that the Orioles aren't necessarily splashing as much as people usually expect with new ownership. I don't know what's going on there exactly. So if that's the case, getting Dylan Cease at maybe $14 million for just this year might be something they want to do. And they'll be like, you know what? We've got like 57 prospects anyway. We can give them Kierstad. We can give them a bullpen arm or a low inning arm. And then we have another ace to put next to some of our guys that we go after, right? So maybe they'd be interested in that, and you can get some prospects in return. Or maybe, I don't think the Yankees would be interested, but like Jose Trevino, if you could somehow do some trade with him involved, really decent backup catcher. Austin Wells is their primary. He's really good defensively. So I'm just saying, we're going to talk about that more next week. But all in all, those are the players that I'm feeling right now for this offseason. I know they don't sound super sexy, but to me, they do. I know, Joc Pederson, not the most sexy in the world, but I think also it would be fun if he went there. You know why? Because I think he will have officially played for every team except the Rockies. He played with the D-backs. He played with the Dodgers. He played with the Giants. I think that would be kind of funny. So Joc Pederson, that would be super fun. Do not sleep on that as a potential bat to make this lineup better. And then you could do some clever platoon thing, because I actually think Schilt did a pretty good job, right? So that they get another player to play DH every now and then. If Joc Pederson struggles, I think that could work. I really do. I think that the Padres, Schilt did a pretty good job managing a little bit of their depth last year. So that's what I think, guys, in terms of just right now, my preliminary thoughts heading into the thicker of the offseason. Not the thick of it, right? It's not calm before the storm. We're in the storm, everybody. But that is what I'm feeling in terms of the Padres' options for this winter. I hope you guys liked it. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Remember to leave a comment on the YouTube channel. DM me on Twitter. I'm going to be reading a bunch of the comments from this past week for Monday's mailbag episode. And next week, we will be going to 3 episodes a week, so be prepared for that. That does not mean I don't want to hear from you guys, though, so please feel free to send that out. Still got fun stuff on the episodes. Future episodes, I should say. Miller Thomas is coming back on the show to talk about his opinions on things, talk some NL West stuff. Locked on Angels guys we're still working on. And, of course, the Padres will make a move. And I will have you covered, folks. So hit that subscribe button. We're close to 2,000 subs. But until next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take care.